Let's talk about the Maine Coon. You know the one. Big, beautiful, America's gentle giant. It's the official state cat of Maine, a seriously rugged native breed that was practically born from those harsh New England winters. But here's the thing. Behind that majestic look lies a pretty fascinating secret. Nobody is exactly sure where it came from. Its origin story is this incredible mix of history, legend, and honestly, some pure biological fantasy. Okay, so let's get right into it. To really understand the Maine Coon, we have to pull apart all these different threads of its identity. Is it just a product of natural selection, a descendant of royal pets, or, and this is the most famous myth of all, is it the impossible offspring of a cat and a raccoon? And that, right there, is the central puzzle. We have this celebrated official breed, a real piece of American heritage, but its backstory is completely shrouded in mystery. The stories you hear are way more folktale and theory than proven fact, which, just makes this cat's whole journey even more compelling. We're going to start with the most fantastical claims out there, the stories that were inspired by the cat's unique look, and the ones that are just a little too wild to be true. So on one hand, you've got the cat that everybody knows and loves, the celebrated working cat of Maine, this hardy mouser that was forged by necessity. But then on the other hand, you have this mysterious silhouette, a history just filled with unproven tales, where its true origin is the biggest contradiction of them all. So let's tackle the big one, the raccoon myth. For a long time, people looked at this cat and thought they saw solid evidence. I mean, look at that long, bushy, almost ringed tail. And that common brown tabby pattern looks a whole lot like a raccoon's coloring. And of course, the name coon, it had to be short for raccoon, right? Well, no. The scientific verdict on this is crystal clear, super simple, and absolutely final. It is biologically impossible. There has never been, and there will never be, a cat-raccoon hybrid. And the reason why really just comes down to basic biology. Cats belong to the family Felidae. Raccoons, they're in the family Procyon. We're talking about two completely different species, separated by this massive taxonomic gulf. That just means they simply cannot interbreed. End of story. All right, so a slightly more believable but still totally false myth is the bobcat theory, and you can totally see why this one took hold. The Maine Coon has those incredible little lynx tips on its ears, it's got a formidable size, and these huge tufted paws that look like natural snowshoes. It really does look like it could have a wild cat in its family tree, but again, genetics says no. So with the impossible myths out of the way, we get to the legends. These are the more romantic tales that are a bit more plausible, but they still lack any real proof. This is probably the most famous legend. The story goes that during the French Revolution, Marie Antoinette was planning to escape to Maine. She sent her most prized possessions ahead on a ship, and that cargo included 6 of her absolute favorite long-haired cats. Well, the queen was captured and executed, but her cats, they landed safely in Wiscasset, Maine, where they got friendly with the local cats, supposedly giving the Maine Coon its royal lineage. Now, this legend is so powerful because it's actually built on a foundation of truth. There really was an escape plot that involved a ship captain headed for Maine. The only part of the story we can't prove is, well, the most important part, the cats. There's just no record they were ever on board. The other charming story gives us a different origin for the name. This one centers on a sea captain named Charles Coon, who supposedly sailed around with a crew of long-haired cats. Whenever he docked in New England, his cats would go ashore, and any long-haired kittens that turned up in the local population were called one of Coon's cats. It's a great story, but just like the Queen's cats, there's no actual record that Captain Coon ever existed. So, if it's not a raccoon, not a bobcat, not a royal, and not a rogue's cat, what is it? Okay, now we get to the scientifically accepted truth, which, believe it or not, is actually more fascinating than any of the myths. The theory that pretty much everyone agrees on is called the ship cat hypothesis. It suggests the Maine Coon was created right here in America. Seamen who were arriving in New England ports brought long-haired cats on their ships, to control rodents. These overseas cats then interbred with the local short-haired cats that were already there. So the result wasn't some imported breed, but a brand new one, forged in the melting pot of these port towns. But who was the breeder that turned this mix of cats into the majestic animal we know today? It wasn't a person. It was the environment itself. The real breeder of the Maine Coon was the harsh New England climate. This is pure survival of the fittest in action. Only the cats with the absolute best adaptations for the cold managed to survive. That shaggy, water-resistant coat? Perfect for snow. That big, bushy tail that started the whole raccoon myth? It's basically a built-in scarf to wrap around their face for warmth. And those big, tufted paws that look like a bobcat's? They're natural snowshoes, helping them walk right on top of the snow. This is also why the Maine Coon looks so much like the Norwegian forest cat. Genetic testing has actually proven they aren't directly related. What we're seeing instead is a perfect example of something called convergent evolution. Check this out. The Maine Coon, the Norwegian forest cat, and the Siberian cat all developed in really harsh cold climates. And so, completely independently, they evolved similar traits to survive: big bodies, shaggy coats, tufted paws. They look alike because they all solved the same environmental problem, not because they share a recent ancestor. The origin story might end there, with natural selection doing its thing, but the Maine Coon's modern history, well, that's a whole other saga of fame, near disaster, and a truly remarkable comeback. Back in 1895, a Maine Coon was the toast of the town, winning the first big American cat show. But then its popularity absolutely plummeted when exotic Persian cats arrived on the scene. The decline was so bad that by the 1950s, the breed was actually declared extinct. But a small, dedicated group of breeders refused to let it die, and through their efforts, it was brought back from the brink, achieving full championship status by 1976 and becoming Maine's official state cat in 1985. But this incredible resurrection came with a hidden cost. The entire modern, pedigreed breed was rebuilt from an unbelievably small number of cats. How small, you ask? The answer is just 5. That's right. 5 foundation cats account for roughly 70% of the entire gene pool of modern pedigreed Maine Coons. This created what's called a severe genetic bottleneck. So while this amazing act of preservation saved the breed, it also locked in a very narrow genetic foundation, which unfortunately increased the risk for certain health issues like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and hip dysplasia. And this all leads us to the modern paradox of the Maine Coon. Is it still that rugged, hardy, natural breed that was forged by the New England winter? Or has its journey into the world of pedigrees and show rings maybe transformed it into something a little more fragile? That question really defines the gentle giant's identity today, a perfect blend of wild myth and very well-documented history.